Good afternoon. It's late. I know it's late. Good afternoon. We're going to do this together, or we're not going to do it at all. All right? Good afternoon. All right. There will be a responsive reading later. So today's talk is about what to do when things go wrong at events or when bad things happen to great event people. Now, if you've been in this business for a while, you know. And if you're only getting into this event business more recently, you will find out that no one gets away from this life or this career unscathed. So, by the way, that never gets old. It never gets old. I have 6 P's that I play my role with, which is proper prior planning provides professional protection. We're going to do that 5 times fast all together. Well, actually, you notice it says protection at the end because what we're trying to do is protect our careers and our clients. But all of this is just not perfect. It does not work perfectly. This is something that, there we go. We're prepared for anything. That is something that I said to myself and to the media constantly, anybody who wanted to listen, including our staff, throughout the preparation for Super Bowl 48. And I believed it only a little bit. We were prepared for anything because we were pros, we were trusted, we had a terrific track record. But track records only get you so far, and they don't really account for what actually happens, right? The past is prologue, but it really isn't a predictor of anything that's going to happen to you. So in this particular case, you can see that we had to have plans for Super Bowl 48 and plans and more plans and more plans. But then whatever you do plan for whatever event you do, and it doesn't have to be a Super Bowl because the same things apply to a big corporate event or the Shapiro Bar Mitzvah. At the end of the day, all of the operant philosophies, all the things you have to prepare for are pretty much the same. So you create plans and you create backup plans. And no matter how much you plan and no matter how much time you have to put into it, something happens that we just don't expect.
New Orleans native Jacoby Jones returned the kickoff 108 yards, tying an NFL record. And it appeared taking any hope of a close game with him.
That changes everything for the 49ers.
At that very moment, 98 seconds into the second half, we were up in NFL control interviewing Supovitz. Suddenly, a blowout became a blackout. Half the stadium went dark.
Everybody else saw it. All right, we lost lights. Doug, tell me what we do and when we do it.
What happened?
Well, lights just went out in the field.
Lights just went out on the field, I think.
All communication with NFL control had been cut off. The network was flying blind.
We're going to a manual override.
NFL control was also in the dark.
Okay, we got to let people know.
A sense of uncertainty filled the room.
Do we have PA? Do we have access to PA? Let's give people the PA.
Supovitz was searching for answers, and what he heard from Superdome executive Doug Thornton was anything but good.
Frank, we lost the A feed.
What does that mean?
That means that we have to do the bus tie.
What does that mean?
That means about a 20-minute delay.
I can't hear me.
2.5 minutes passed before CBS learned from an NFL official on the field that they were facing at least a 20-minute delay. Upstairs, Supovitz showed no sign of panic. Before the league asked us to turn off our cameras, it was clear that no one knew the cause of the outage.
Hey, Solomon and Steve, I know I mentioned this to you already, but try to get somebody from the league to talk to you or find out some more information, okay?
Finally, after 34 of the most surreal minutes in NFL history, the lights came on. And with league approval, so did our cameras, as Supovitz made this announcement.
All right, everybody, listen up. This is important. We're not going to start again until I know everybody's systems are up. I hope that when you reach that moment, 60 Minutes isn't standing next to you. Like, what are the chances, right? If anything could possibly go wrong, it will go wrong. Well, the fact of the matter is that it ended up actually documenting something that was really quite important, which is that there were a group of professionals that were actually not focused on 60 Minutes anymore. I completely forgot they were there, to be quite honest, once the lights went out. What was really important was that everybody went into the jobs they were trained to do. Just like when something like that happens to you, you're going to do that too. So we are going to talk about SUPs, do and don'ts for crisis management. So when we get to this part of the program, because it's so late and I want everybody, how many of you have your coffee? Nobody. Okay. So what we're going to do is when you see the heading, SUPs, do's, I want you to say it. SUPs, do's, and then SUPs, don'ts. That's what we're going to do. So the first is, repeat after me, SUPs, don'ts. SUPs, don'ts. Okay, you're going to do it, remember the with me part. Don't panic. This is absolutely essential. Panic solves nothing. All it does is it panics the people around you. It paralyzes decision making. SUPs, do's, exactly. Lead. What you want to do is be the person, if you're leading this charge, you don't want to be the person that people are looking at and you're scratching your head and you're falling apart. Your staff is going to say 2 words when something horrible happens, and it's going to be, holy crap. They're not going to know what to do next, and you may not know what to tell them to do next, but what's important for you to understand is they're waiting for your guidance. They want to help. They're looking for a leader. They want to know who is in charge. So it's okay not to know what to do, but keep everybody working together. SUPs, don'ts. There's a tendency to react when something happens. But what you generally react to is the symptom of the disease, not the root cause. If you had a fever, you might have the flu, you might have a cold, or you could have Ebola, right? So are you going to treat the fever, or are you going to try to get to whatever the problem is? Do you remember in the video there was one quote I said over and over again, not knowing it was going to be immortalized, which is, what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, we lost the A feed. What does that mean? Well, I happen to know what the A feed was because I also know what the B feed and the C feed was, but that's not important. What I was trying to find out was what it meant to us at that moment. It was important not to react. The only thing I did know that had to happen was we had to be able to communicate to the fans. SUPs, do's. Assess what's going on. Figure out what is happening. When the lights went out, it could have been a citywide blackout. It could have been an act of sabotage or terror. Yes, I live in that world. Or it could have been a failure in the building of the equipment, which is what it turned out to be. Within 3 minutes, because of everyone on that chart knowing what their play was, we knew it was not an act of terror. We knew that the building did not have to be evacuated. That was a critical moment, don't you think? Knowing you don't have to evacuate 80,000 people with 160 million people watching it on international television. So you want to make sure you're making rational decisions. You assess the situation. It took us 3 minutes to do that. Everybody took on the role that they were meant to take on. SUPs, don'ts. I'm going to save you now from the rest of this. Don't get caught by the predictable. Super Bowl 48 was played outside. We knew there was a possibility of snow. We didn't start thinking about that the day before when we heard the weather forecast. Turned out to be 51 degrees. That was pretty cool. But during the construction for Super Bowl, which took about 5 weeks, it snowed 4 times. Okay? If we didn't have a plan for that, and what needed to be cleared and when it needed to be cleared and how quickly it needed to be cleared and how much money you had to spend to clear it, it could have backed up everything else. There was an enormous amount of preparation that had to be undertaken. You have to make sure that you know what dominoes are going to fall by whatever delay you might have, whatever postponement you might have. So what you want to do is have those plans. That's a subs-do. Plan A fails, go to Plan B. Plan C is next. Now, the NFL was very, very transparent and drove people a little bit nuts with the notion that if the game could not be played, could not physically be played on Super Bowl Sunday, there was an option to play it on Saturday or on Monday or even Tuesday. But there's a lot of dominoes that fall when you make that kind of a decision, and you want to make sure that your sponsors who have parties the night before or other people have an opportunity to make their own contingency plans because they may not be in lockstep with you otherwise. So let's talk about another don't. Don't walk alone. You are not out on the ledge by yourself. You will feel that way. If you run an event, you probably feel that way when everything's going well. But you are not alone. You have a staff, a team that is absolutely incredible because you selected them. Count on your team and empower them to make the decisions that need to be made so that you're not the only one who has to tell them what to do. They know what they're supposed to do. So go back to the blackout. I didn't have to tell the security department to figure out if that was an act of terror. They went into that mode right away, and they should. And here's what saved the game. You saw a game that got put back together in 34 minutes. If the building's operations team had not come together to shut off the HVAC and the fryers and all the other non-essential electricity in the building, the other side of the building would have gone out too. And we would have been done. I didn't make that decision. You know why? I don't know how to make that decision. I don't know about fryers and HVAC. But somebody who did, who was empowered to make that decision, made the decision. And ended up saving the NFL and the broadcaster an enormous amount of difficulty. Don't hog information. If you're empowering people to make decisions, you have to communicate with them. You have to tell them what's going on. You have to tell them what the plan is. In the case of what you saw, you may have seen it at the very end of that clip. I said, we are not getting started until I know every system is back online. Any football fans in here? Okay, so you'll appreciate this. The lights came on in 24 minutes. I held the game another 10 minutes because I did not want the story to be the instant replay system had not rebooted and was not functional, and therefore there was a controversial play and it lost the game for somebody. So if we're dead in the water for 24 minutes, what's another 10? You have to make sure that you can communicate with every part of your system. Don't take your eye off the ball. Something happens early in your event and you're busy trying to solve it, you forget there's other things about to happen. That can be incredibly scary. So if something happens early in the day, early in the Super Bowl, when I ran a Super Bowl, I knew that at 4:30 I needed to make sure the teams were in the building. I knew that at 6 o'clock we were going into air. If I didn't have everybody in the right place and everything in the right place, it didn't matter what happened before. You have to prioritize and not take your eye off the ball. You are an air traffic controller. You have to land the planes one at a time. Know what your priorities are and know where they fall in the schedule, and be darn sure you don't miss something because you're too busy dealing with something that is less important. Don't blame. This is unimaginable, but I'm going to ask you to imagine it anyway because it happened. During the 24 minutes when the lights were out in New Orleans, the power company had issued a press release blaming the stadium, and the stadium had issued a press release blaming the energy company. And everybody was looking to us for a quote on who we blamed. And we didn't comment. It's not important. What is important when you have a situation is solving the problem, not laying the blame. There's Clouseau, you heard it. It's more important to investigate afterwards. Why? To keep it from happening again. So you can imagine just how many backup power systems we had at MetLife Stadium for Super Bowl 48. The last thing that I will leave you with as a final ounce of prevention is rehearse. You would not do a show without a rehearsal, right? If you have a big event, you're going to do blocking rehearsals sometimes. You're going to do a performance rehearsal. What we did at the Super Bowl, if you have something big enough, I would strongly advise you to do it. We did a tabletop simulation 10 days before the event. Everybody who could make a decision on game day was sitting around a table, and everybody who they would have talked to on a walkie-talkie was sitting behind them, and we hired a facilitator to come and who knew our operations plan and throw monkey wrenches into it. There's a murder in the parking lot. There's a this, there's a that. How do you react to it? It builds the team. It builds the communication. It builds trust among the teammates. And I will tell you right now that the power going out was not one of those. It was not one of the simulations we did. But if you look at what happened in that clip and the calmness by which everybody went through that experience, knowing, I guess in the backs of their minds, that 160 million people are waiting to find out whether you solved the problem or not, they all went into the same mode they do during the drill. So if you have something logistically complicated, dry run it. Particularly when it comes to transportation, I think everybody's kind of been there with buses going in the wrong direction at the wrong time and all that. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and rehearsing even your logistics can go a long way. Thank you very much. I hope this helps you when your lights go out.